Alright everybody, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 343, Fairies, tersely titled there, by Falding. Link in the description to my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links are to my books, blogs. 35 pages, so this is a very short work, although again, keep in mind, the original works I work from usually are twice as long. They're usually roughly double-spaced and or have wide side margins, much wider than modern format generally suggests. So when you compress these materials, especially if the font's different, they tend to shrink. Contains all the same material. I had to heavily edit through it because it used a lot of flowery Old English style wording, despite the fact that it's not from that very old period. I think there was some archaicism in there. A very good folkloric compilation. Overall, it's basically there are two components to this. The first is the folkloric content itself, drawing from other primary materials, especially poetry, but also some prose, all the way from antiquity up through what was then the modern, industrial period, the sort of Victorian Edwardian era. Just compilations of folklore describing fairies, but it goes beyond that because it really takes the elves, the gnomes, and things like that and all sort of boils them down into the same overall subject matter. So you've got a lot of allusions to, like, what is the fairy's form, what does it do, etc. Fairy lore in the most literal sense, fairy tales. It goes beyond that, however, and almost becomes a social reformist manifesto towards the end, in which it appears to opine the idea that, hey, look at how lovely and how fun these stories are, and little kids still retain all this knowledge about, all of this various folklore, and they're having all this fun, and look at us, we're a bunch of boring stiffs. Now we should bring back that mythology. We need to promulgate it more because it's like it's happy. And of course, people then, there was a sense of malaise among many urbanites in that period of time, early 20th century especially. You have wars and rumors of wars and steamships and ironclads and all this other shit. And there's coal smog everywhere. People are beginning to extract other energy resources. And things were kind of bleak. And health problems were everywhere. And a lot of times they blamed it on sewer gas and coal sewage and stuff like that. Tuberculosis is caused by all this smog. Quarter true. Just to be clear. And so they sort of began reverting. The Volkish movements of this time period are partially because of a hatred of urbanization. And so this piece of folklore, in and of itself, the actual work, becomes a historical period piece as well. I love it when works do that. It's like with the work on Japan by Lafcadio Hearn, sorry. His works, because they look at a period of time in which there was a transitory phase going on between the rural folkish ways and the new urbanization of the Meiji period. If you look at the studies he did, they were like the last generation of studies of authentic Japanese religion before they were warped by urbanization. And he even notes that process literally ongoing at the time. Likewise, Falding's work here on fairies is from one of these transitory periods as well. The outlands of England and other developed parts of the world in the early 20th century were beginning to get roads. They were beginning to get electrification. They were beginning to get the telephone wires and everything else, and the telegraph systems. They were being hooked up to the wider world, and over the course of the subsequent roughly 30-40 year period, we began marching towards a more cosmopolitan religious worldview that was also very secular. These compilations tended to be less on the secular side and delve way off into romanticism. So the amount of material here for this short volume is actually quite profuse, but I like it more almost because it's a piece of history in and of itself than just for the folklore that it involves. Again, link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links are to my books, blogs. Highly recommended. That's about all. Peace out.